A pre-sectarian corpus of original Buddhism, long before the Theravadins and the Mahayanists and long before the Zen folk came on. People have a lot of funny beliefs and notions about Buddhism. Where did you learn about Buddhism? Did you ever read his doctrine? Nah, I don't read Doctrine. I just pay attention to what my teacher says. Well, that's fascinating. Have you ever been actually interested in what it actually taught? Well, I can't get into dogma. It's not dogma, it's actually learning something. I find that sort of anti-intellectualism extremely funny and extremely telling. Anyway, virtually every Buddhist today, Western Buddhists, Buddhism teaches the end of suffering. It's like, what sort of suffering are you talking about? Yeah, end of suffering. It doesn't teach any such thing. There's no such passage in Doctrine referring to the pre-sectarian corpus, which is the Digha Nikkei, Majjhima, and Gottara Nikkei, Kodako Nikkei, specifically Dhammapada Pali, Udana Iribotaka, Sagatavagga Pali, first book of the Samyutta Nikaya. Yeah, doesn't teach an end of physical suffering anywhere. In fact, in any translation, Gautama's last hours were spent in, quote, extreme physical pain and suffering, doubled over, retching, vomiting, his last hours. So the same person everybody's calling a Buddha. Buddha is, by the way, in Doctrine is Akyamkana, which is a non-person. This is the reason why all early Buddhist iconography, pre-sectarian, like on the Sanchi Top, which were some of the ashes are buried in the Sanchi Top of Gautama. They took his ashes and they spread around and they built these stupas. Buddha is depicted as this empty place or as a pillar of fire. Buddha is not a person. It is not a psychophysical entity. All those gold and brass statues you see in Southeast Asia, Laos, Burma, Thailand, California, Zen centers, and all those Buddha statues would be, from the premise of original Buddhism, to be completely heretical. Because a Buddha is Akyamkana, which means a non-entity, a non-being. Because if you actually have a physical depiction of a living being with arms and face and head, that is a psychophysical persona non grata. Rupa Vedana Samna Sankara Vina Isakaya Namisata. The psychophysical is not the soul. It is not Tathagata. By the way, Tathagata means arrived at that. In other words, the nave of the wheel, standing at the place of Brahman. In other words, there's no such thing as a Buddha who is a psychophysical entity made out of blood and urine and the psychophysical constituents. All of those statues representing, well, that's a Buddha, look at a Buddha statue. That would have been heretical in any translation, by the way, in Doctrine, because that's not a Buddha at all. So all those people you see doing this number to brass and gold statues, that's not only not original to Buddhism, it is completely contradictory to what the original teaches. Completely 100% contradictory. And that, again, is why all early Buddhist iconography never ever depicts that they'll have worshippers like this surrounding Tathagata, or the Buddha. It's shown as an empty seat, shown as a pillar of fire. It's never shown as a psychophysical flesh and blood entity, because that is heretical, i.e. evil. In other words, you are praising something that is, by its very essence, evil, i.e. the psychophysical, the persona. That thing you see in the mirror made out of flesh and blood. That is very funny. It might be nerdy funny, and you might not think it's funny. But all those Buddha statues are not the term Buddha by definition, in any way, shape, or form. They are not. And that is heretical, from the perspective of original Buddhist doctrine. Original! Anyway, getting back to suffering. Buddhism, nowhere within Doctrine, teaches an end to physical suffering. It's not my opinion, it's a fact. Gautama's last hours in any translation, is physical pain, suffering, bent over, retching, and that was from eating sukarmadava, as a Pali term for what he ate that poisoned him, sukarmadava. Su being pressings or squeezings, doesn't mean pig flesh, okay? I'll translate it as, they translate it as sukarmadava. But it doesn't say that. It's su, the juice of the madava plant, the karamadava plant, Su, and then karamadava. Karamadava is this orange-looking fruit that grows on a bush in India. It's poisonous. It has a milky excretion. It's wickedly poisonous. So that's actually what he died from eating. Bent over and suffering. Buddhism nowhere teaches the end. Fascinatingly enough, all of this, of course, is one of the reasons why Dr. Anandi Kitish Kumaraswamy, a guy whose son I knew, and granted me the work to all of his father's writings. He was on the stamp of India. He famously said, and he was 100% accurate, Buddhism today is most famous for everything it originally never taught. Oh, wise words have never been said. If you type in Anatta or Anatman in a Google search or Bing search, it says,
Anatta means no soul, and Buddhism is different than Hinduism because Buddhism teaches that there is no soul.
Literally, you'll find 100,000 websites to say this, and it is not only illogical, nonsensical, it is non-doctrinal. I know all 576 occurrences of the term Anatta. Nowhere does Buddhism teach that there is no soul. Absolutely nowhere. It teaches this is not the soul, that is not the soul. This is via negativa. This is apophaticism. This is neri, not this. This is not the soul, that is not the soul. Neri, meaning not this, not that. Buddhism, nowhere in doctrine, absolutely nowhere, it teaches that there is no. It says the soul is the light, the dipa, the only refuge. Attaka so saranam gatika. Atasarana ananna. Why am I speaking ancient Pali? Nobody knows what the heck I'm saying. Teaches that it's the only word it's called eternal, or nicham is the soul. So, literally, Nandakita Kumaraswamy was 100% correct, and then some. Buddhism is most famous today for everything it originally never taught. Never taught the end of suffering. All those Buddha statues are not Buddha by definition. It does not teach that there is no soul. Absolutely doesn't teach that anywhere. Actually, suvimutta chittasanabannam. Nirvana is the thoroughly liberated chitta. Chitta is the Pali word for the nous. Yeah, you know the Greek word nous, which is also the Latin for spiritus sancta. Consciousness, empirical consciousness in Pali is vijnana. Yeah. Chitta does not mean mind. Unfortunately, mind and consciousness don't really have any differentiation in English. So English is really bad about mind, consciousness. Unfortunately, they all kind of reflexively point to the existential brain, made out of jello. So, here's your metaphysical lesson for the day. If you want to learn what Buddhism is not, all you have to do is listen to someone that's a Buddhist tell you about Buddhism. Because they don't know it all. And this makes them really mad instantly. Is that, that's very interesting at all, what you just said. But I'm only interested in what Buddhism actually teaches. Not your opinions, your feelings, your beliefs, or what you're taught by your master. I'm interested in actually what it does teach. Not your hyperbolic, sectarian, nutshell belief system, which is fine for you. I don't care what you believe or don't believe. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. None of that interests me. You just said a bunch of stuff about Buddhism that's actually not in the teachings itself. Because if we're to say that Buddhism is A, B, C, X, Y, Z, then this should be based in what it actually did and does teach. The originals, well, it's old stuff. We gotta change with the times. Well, metaphysics and, the teachings thereof, they actually have a point of reference, and it's called sola scriptura. We can't invent something completely holy. Well, this is Buddhism. I teach I sit in a zafu, and, Buddhism is about blanking out your mind and seeking emptiness, and it's about the elimination. Well, that's all interesting, but that's not Buddhism. Well, sure it is. That's what I was taught. No, it doesn't say that anywhere in the teachings. Well, how would you know? I don't know. I've been translating the ancient teachings now for decades. Yeah, there's not a single person that's ever bested me in a debate on the topic, because they can't. Because when you actually use the teachings as your point of reference, then it makes debate really, really easy. Let's arrive at the truth of something. We're going to make a statement about Buddhism. Let's actually talk about what it actually teaches. Not about what your Zen master said or what HHDL said. I don't know if you know who HHDL is. All your views and pontifications are fascinating, but what about what it actually did teach? And that, of course, would be within the pre-sectarian corpus. In other words, before, the teachings that came before. Well, we don't know how old that stuff is. Yeah, we do, because on the 13th Pillar Edict of King Ashoka, which is dated to roughly 400 BC, no later than 400 BC, probably a little bit earlier, it mentions the Panch Nikaya, or the five Nikayas, an ancient Brahmi Prakrit. I don't know if you know what the Pillar Edicts of King Ashoka are, but they're essentially the second oldest writings in India. The first oldest writings are also in Brahmi Prakrit on the funeral topes. Ceramic jars are actually found buried Gautama's ashes. Anyway, that's the oldest. The oldest example of Sanskrit, by the way, is only dated to the 3rd century CE of the Saddharma Pundarika Sutta. 3rd century CE, i.e. AD. So anyway, there you go. There's your lesson for the day on the original stuff versus stuff that not only is it not original, it's completely illogical. And you listen to other people, it's like, that's fascinating what you just said, but it has nothing to do with the truth. It's not backed up by doctrine. In fact, it's contradicted by sin. Doctrine is dogma. Well, it's like, what are we making reference to? You're talking about Buddhism, right? Well, sure I am. I'm talking about Buddhism. It's like, well, if you're talking about Buddhism, then what you're talking about should be referenced in its actual teachings, but it's not. Well, you see, we actually have to have a frame of reference, a thread, a point upon which to stand. When we're going to discuss something or debate something, we have to have a frame of reference, a point of launching, My launching point is the actual teachings. Your launching point is a bunch of sectarian hooey and stuff that you read in little silly paperback books. Find your inner peace. Those little pop psychology books, the New Age stuff. It's all about peace and stuff, about burning sandalwood and, being kind to your neiber. It's like, that has nothing to do with transmigration, the elimination thereof, transcendence, disobjectification with empirical reality, which is unreality. Wow, you're just full of info, aren't you? These were so reminiscent of the debates that I've had over the decades. Anyway, hope you like this video. Catch you later. Bye.